I'm working now for a company that is looking to build a web shop, going into e-commerce. I posted on LinkedIn. I'm looking for an agency that can help me build a web shop, and 77 companies reacted. All of them with, "Hey, we're the best."
Hey everyone, today I had an amazing conversation with Bart de Waele. Bart is quite a local legend as he was involved in founding some of the most iconic digital agencies in Belgium, such as Wees, Duke and Grace, and recently Springbok. So it's a very interesting conversation as we take a deep dive into the landscape of agencies and how they have evolved and what the role of technology and brand is within all of that. So buckle up and let's talk branding.
Oh, a legend, that's a big word. I'm famous on local social media, but that's like being rich in Monopoly. It's good for the ego, but doesn't help you further. What you need to know about me, I studied accountancy and then escaped after 10 years working in a bank, started my own digital agency, brought that to some 100 people based in Ghent, and sold it last year. So I'm an entrepreneur working in the field of technology meets marketing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think back then when you founded it, it was called Netlash.
That's right. I changed the name of the company 4 times.
Yeah, Netlash, Wees, and then Duke and Grace.
And now Springbok. Yes.
Springbok, voila. But maybe take us back a little bit to that time, early days of the internet.
Mhm.
Like, first of all, what was going on? Like in terms of why did you start this? Because it wasn't obvious back then, I guess. And like, what did a typical project look like in those days?
Well, it was 2006. I dabbled some building some websites on the side, but then in 2006, me and my partner we decided to go for it under the name of Netlash, building websites. And in at that time in Belgium, the bulk of the websites was still doing the Flash thing, moving parts, very beautiful. But at the same time, Google was climbing up, and the importance of Google for websites was showing up also here in Belgium a bit later than in the rest of the world, but also in 2006. And we started making that as our core competency, building websites that score high in Google. And that's how Netlash was founded. With the two of us here in the attic, and I still remember my mother saying, "Hey Bart, what will you do when everybody has a website?" I said, "I don't know. We'll see. We'll see."
So you built a company with 100 employees. So that's not bad. I'm also curious to see like if we go back today, like you have been in, let's say, part of this birth of online marketing, and then looking at it today, like how have you seen it evolve? What are some of the evolutions that you look back upon now that have really changed?
Well, you mentioned the naming of the company, and these names were the logical evolution based on the evolution of the internet. When we started 2006, it was all about making websites, and that was still a new thing to do. So it was quite technical. It was building stuff. But by the end of 2010, it was clear to me that just building a website wasn't enough. Bringing the right people to it was as important as making the website. And at that time in Belgium, there weren't combined companies. Either you were a web builder or you were an online marketeer. and I merged with an online marketeer, an online marketing company, to form the new agency. We were some 20 odd people. There were some 20, 25 people. And at a certain moment, a potential customer, a prospect came to us and said, we want to have a website built and have traffic generated for that website. And we decided to partner up at that time as two separate companies, but file in one dossier to pitch for it. And we lost. We lost to a very traditional advertising agency that was starting to do digital, but combined the two in one clear offering. And in the post-mortem, when I went for dinner with the boss of the online marketing company, and we tried to figure out why did we lose. We're not used to losing. And it was because we still were two companies trying to make one offer, but it felt still as two companies. And as a joke, we both said, hey, what if we join forces and just merge the two? And that happened. So we changed from Netlash as a web builder to something else, something that was more of a digital agency. I used that momentum in 2010, 2011, sorry for the bad Flanglish.
No worries.
We merged it, but I used that momentum to change building just websites for local small companies. I wanted to change it to go to more complex customers, more corporate customers with more interesting questions for us. So I changed overnight from a small 20-something company doing executional building of websites for local SMEs. I changed it to, we're going to go for corporates. We're now 45 people. We're going to be strategic. So change on all fronts, which was kind of foolish to do. I think the first year after the merge, I think we had a turnover of people of 45%. So nearly 1 in 2 of our employees left because they said, "Hey, this isn't what I signed up for." I started in a small company working executional for SMEs, and now I'm in a bigger company working strategically for corporates. But hey, I went ahead and made it work. So that's when we changed our name to Wijs, away from the technical sounding Netlash and away from the perception of just building websites, but offering a digital, mainly digital, purely digital, strategic input.
Interesting. Yeah. And then for the listeners, Wijs is kind of like wise, but also in local slang, it's also cool. So it was definitely a change also in perception of that agency. And maybe because I think you mentioned something interesting there of like combining forces. And I think in general, that's a bit of like a macro thing. We've seen that a lot of agencies are consolidating, or at least were consolidating up to a point where they become like very big. And I'm wondering, like, do you see that trend go on, or rather go the other way around and start unbundling again and smaller studios? Like, what's your perception there?
I think the short answer is yes, both of them. And this is a trend or a movement that's been going on for ages and ages and is still going on. It's like there's a very turbulent underbelly of small shops, very specific on one expertise or one niche audience. And they're growing, starting from their expertise, growing to and this is I'm talking about the Belgian market, with the scale of the Belgian market, growing to 10, 20, 30 people at max. and that's the end of their specific expertise. To grow beyond that, you have to go broader in your offering and be a bit more strategic and get more offering into the market. So you have to grow. And that's a very difficult jump to make from 20 people to 40, 50 people with a broad offering. So not many can do that. So I see lots of these companies yo-yoing, growing to 10 people, 20 people, and then getting smaller again or quitting. So there's this constant new expertise that's coming up, growing, and making a jump to full service agency, or getting consolidated by a full service agency. And then there's a new expertise emerging on the market, and then you see new young guys who are native to that new expertise, building a new offering, growing. And so there's this constant creative destruction based on the tempo of changes in the expertise. So you had building websites, online marketing, social media. Now there's TikTok that's coming as a new expertise, and all these social media and influencer marketing things. There will be AR, I think, in a few years, and so there will be another wave of creative destruction and new expertise guys that are coming up, overtaking the more incumbents who have not the native skill of that new expertise.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess like after that whole journey that you had of growing that company to a very big company that is doing basically full service, you jumped ship, and now you're running I Know a Guy. Maybe tell us a bit about like what was the thinking behind that, because I think it's interesting for the listeners, the type of services you decided to offer.
Yes. Well, it's I'm convinced that most strategies are emerging and post factum. Is you do something and you stumble upon something that's successful, and looking in hindsight, you discover the strategy instead of defining a strategy. And this is what happened when I sold the company. Decided to do something else. Some companies came to me and said, "Hey, Bart, do you know an agency that can do this, or do you know an agency that can do that?" And after doing that for free 3 times, I said, "Hey, maybe this is my job now." So I started last December with I Know a Guy, I Know a Girl. You can choose; it works either way. I help companies who want to engage in agency. So I help them in 4 different phases, 4 different steps. I help them decide or define what kind of skill sets they need. I help them shape if this is an internal role, a freelance role, or an agency role. The third part is the hardest part, is writing the briefing for an agency. And then at last, I help them select them, long list, short list selection. And I think there's a real need there. The question mark is are there enough customers that recognize the need and want to pay for the need? But when I look at the agency landscape in Belgium and the Netherlands, there's this sea of sameness. They all talk about themselves in the same way. And strangely enough, all of them say, we're different. We're going to change marketing. And by saying that, they're putting themselves on the same level as everybody else. So all jokes aside, what I see is a lot of confusion with customers, with clients. They don't care about that market. Once every 3 to 5 years, they emerge, they stick their head out and look for an agency. They don't know where to look. They don't know how to choose, how to select. They don't know how to differentiate. And I can understand why.
Yeah.
I'm working now for a company that is looking to build a web shop, going into e-commerce. I posted on LinkedIn, I'm looking for an agency that can help me build a web shop. And 77 companies reacted, all of them with, hey, we're the best. We can do that. I pity the client that has to select out of these 77 people who would be the best fit. So this is my role now. I try to get a right cultural fit between the company, the client, and the agency, and try to get them on a good footing. Try to get this partnership started in the right way by making sure they're communicating on the same level.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I mean, I see the need for it as well. I'm often also playing somewhat of that intermediary role where, like, looking at the strategy first, disconnected from what the execution or will be, and like one thing that I'm thinking about, and there's people listening on both sides here. There's people listening that are in-house that might be interested more in, like, how do you think about selecting the right agency and so on. And then there's people listening from agency side, mostly I think interested in how do we differentiate ourselves in that sea of sameness. Maybe let's tackle that second part first. Like, how do you, maybe you have some ideas on how to actually then stand out and maybe be differentiated.
It's a difficult one, and first of all, you have to understand you're no different than anybody else. Yeah, there's no silver bullet here. There's no innovative new way of doing things. You're helping companies with their marketing. Point final. So don't try to be too smart and too clever about it, because then you'll wind up in very buzzwordy things that are not believable for clients, and they don't understand or can grasp them. The second thing is you have to stop talking about what you're offering. You have to understand, and this is where my 10 years in the bank before I started my agency helped me. I learned a lot of things in that bank, working in that bank. For instance, that I don't want to work in a bank, but they learned me how to sell. And one day, one of those gray old bank sharks sellers came to me, and he talked to me about selling, and he said, Bart, you have to understand that the person on the other side of the table is not buying from you the moment he's convinced of your expertise. He's buying from you the moment he's convinced that you can formulate his problem better than he can do it himself. Because he's not an expert in the solution. He's an expert in the problem. He doesn't know anything about the solution. He cannot decide if it's a good solution or it's a bad solution, because he's not an expert in it. So stop talking about your solution. Stop talking about what you're offering. The moment you start talking about the problem and defining the problem of your customer better than he can do it, that's the moment when that customer is convinced that your solution is also the right one. So I see a lot of agencies talking about this is our culture, and this is our technical stack, and this is what we do, and this is our solution. Irrelevant. And to be very cynical, even the quality of your solution is irrelevant when it comes to selecting an agency in the mind of the customer. You have to understand that the reason why customers choose an agency are different than the reasons why they stay with an agency. And the reasons why they stay is absolutely quality. the quality of your solutions, the quality of your communication, the quality of your project management, all these things. But the reason why they choose it has nothing to do with quality. They can't make a difference between good and bad quality at that moment. I'm talking about most of the clients.
Yeah.
There are exceptions who are better at this. So talking about we're the best, it's irrelevant. Trying to explain the quality of your solution, it's irrelevant. That's not the emotional factor that decides to choose for you.
Interesting. Maybe let's hop on over to the other side. Like for me, this is also very interesting because I've been on the agency side. I've worked for small, big, my own studio, and everything in between. So I kind of know that area and like the struggles. But like I moved in house now in the last 2 years to a health tech scale up. You know, Alan, perhaps. And what's interesting there is like looking at it from the other side is first there is a discussion to be had a lot about should we even go and hire externally or not. And I'm just curious about like your take there, like what are maybe some of the parameters or things that help you make that decision in the first place.
Yeah, there's reasonable explanations and there are emotional explanations. And the reasonable explanations are the ones that get talked about. Is we don't have the manpower or we don't have the expertise, and we want to insource that. Or we want to get the best in the market and level ourselves up and try to learn and internalize that knowledge. And I think that's very important to get these things right. The real rational reason to insource or outsource is clock speed. It's the speed of things to do. If it's a project that's ending and an expertise that has an end in what you're doing and what you need, and it can go slower, meaning it can go with an external party, whereas there's some ping pong in this communication, then it's okay to outsource that to an agency. If the speed at which it should go is higher, then you should internalize. For instance, community management and most social media management in the organic space, I think it should be internalized.
Yeah.
Or working with a freelance profile that's very close and very inside the company, because the flow of information has to be very fast and very internalized. On the other hand, positioning and branding, which is usually a one-off project, I think is possible to externalize it, and even sometimes has benefits of externalizing it, because doing that for yourself is very hard. I always say when you're inside the bottle, it's very hard to read the label. And that's what positioning and branding is usually about, is taking that step back and looking at the label.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I know that's like a big thing. I think a lot of companies dream of doing everything in-house, and I don't agree with that philosophy. I think there is a lot of value to be had with creative partners. It's just, as you said, like knowing when to use them and when not. And I think that's usually where most of the problems arise. But maybe shifting the conversation a bit, you mentioned branding, and this is a podcast about branding and brand building. So I'm also very curious. I saw you posted some things on LinkedIn recently about brand building. So I know you're also very interested in this, but I'm mostly curious, as you've been in this industry and you've seen the shift towards digital and online marketing, and the way brand has been built has been shifting a lot. On your take as to where we are today and maybe also where it's headed in the future?
Whew, that's a very big question, and I'm just echoing the big names, the Sharps and the of this world. Let me take it down a notch and talk about how it came to be. The more digital agencies started small and started with small clients and not that particularly high-end brands. So there's a whole generation of people, digital savvy, digital native marketeers, who are convinced that performance marketing and bottom of funnel is the only thing that matters. And I made the same mistake. And I said, people don't watch TV anymore. All these ads, that's bullshit. It's about features. It's about adding value. It's about conversion, CRO, these kind of things. And that's true until it's not true. And I'll talk about my path. When we had Waze, we were a pure digital agency, and we used the user-centered design method to develop things. And at one time, we were developing for two different banks, big banks in Belgium, their website based on that user-centered design method, with two separate teams that were really separate, that worked independently, but based on the same methodology. And so what happens when you do that, you look at the audience and the customers of that bank and the products of that bank and talk about what these customers want from a website for a bank. And despite what these banks are saying about being different, they have the same products and they have the same audience. So following that user-centered design methodology, we developed two websites separately that were basically the same, just with another color and another logo, and which made sense because they are basically the same. And at that point, that's when I grew up from purely digital. That was the point where I decided, maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something that needs to be differentiated. And that's where brand comes into play. And that's when I started acquiring brand and activation agencies and changed Waze to something else that became really full service, Duke and Grace. And then I came into a league of customers who were able to do television. And who were able to do image spots on television. And I saw the effect on it. I saw the effect of brand and awareness campaigns, even on the digital cost of acquisition. I know we've worked for lots of banks. The smaller banks, they tend to aim for 300-400 euros acquisition cost per new client, while the big banks aim for 150 euros acquisition costs digital. And that's just because of the brand. So the moment you invest long enough and on a big scale enough in brand, your acquisition cost in digital goes down. So there's this connectedness between the two. And we all know the scheme of the long and the short of it, and this balance between the two. But what I'm seeing now, your question was, where is it now and where is it going? I think this balance is coming. And when there's new expertise, there will be a whole new generation of new guys making the same mistakes. When we're all on AR glasses, and they will make the same mistake. But there's a new balance coming where we see that the digital effectiveness, pure bottom funnel, pure performance, pure conversion is topping out. It's like on a plateau. And when you get there, you need to invest in brands to get to a new level. And so the digital guys are learning this in agencies, but also at clients. So I think there will be a very strong push towards more branding for several reasons. The more macro reason is the more you go to the AI platforms like ChatGPT or the marketplaces like Amazon and Bol, the more important it is to be recognized on a brand name and not just on a performance name. So that's the more macro trend. For 2024, I think there will be a huge surge in traditional budgets, television, radio, newspapers, and magazines, because it's very simple. There's an election year coming all over the world. There's the Olympics coming. There's the European Championship of football coming. So there will be massive gains this year to be on an awareness level.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I like how you were looking at it from that angle and not just like from a typical trends angle. I think a lot of it is indeed driven by these macroeconomic things. And what's been interesting for me to see as well is I know you've always been one to be interested in new platforms, new channels. Like you've always been outspoken about those, and I think that's something a lot of people, like maybe especially in-house people, are like struggling with. Like it's already a lot to understand all of the current channels, but like maybe some things, technology platforms, channels that you're excited about in the future.
Well, predicting the future is very hard, especially when it's in the past. Yeah, it's a difficult question. In 2019, I was very excited about TikTok.
I remember.
And the moment the pandemic hit, I started experimenting on TikTok because I wanted to know it and know that channel. I think TikTok is still on the rise. It's still the place to be and will still grow the next year for several reasons. I think. Mainly because it's closer to television than Facebook or Instagram or Twitter are.
Mm-hmm.
It's very close to a lean back experience where advertising is okay and part of the experience, whereas in the Facebook or the Twitter, it's always an interruption in what you're really doing. So it's very clever in the way it was built. It's a pure entertainment channel where advertising has a very native place. I'm convinced that Threads will supplant Twitter, X, should I say? I wasn't very convinced of the Twitter is dead, now it's X, and it's still very much alive. But that was mainly because Threads wasn't available in Europe yet. Now I see the platform, I think there's a real danger there. I think you should always keep an eye out on newish niche channels like Reddit, still very important, Twitch very important. But I think the next few years will be waiting for the new platform to arise, and I'm convinced that it's something like AR, meaning a new platform there was the platform of internet on our desktops and laptops. The second one was the platform of mobile phones, where we're still in the midst of. And now it's waiting for the new platform. And the building blocks are being experimented with, are being put into place. And you see lots of experiments. Humane is one to watch. Rabbit, one to watch. You see lots of new hardware experiments that are working towards a new paradigm of interacting, away from the screen and to a more natural input-output. What it will be, I don't know. Will it be Humane or Rabbit? Doubtful. Will it be Apple who finally delivers with their Vision Pro and mainly the things that will be derived from it? Maybe, but I think there will be our next frontier, and then we will have to be ready to see what kind of applications arise on that new platform, and it will take 3 to 4 years before the new applications will be visible. Like it was 3, 4, 5 years after the introduction of the iPhone, before it was clear that, well, Uber and Airbnb and Instagram and now TikTok are coming to be. But it will need another way of, as brands, of communicating. Just visually. Now we're used to making communication in 2D, dimensions. Everything we do is flattened, is projected on a flat screen, even our video. But the moment you get something that's more AR-like, that's more glasses-like, you get depth. Apple calls it spatial design, but we will need new designers, because it will be very hard to make the move from a 2D designer to a spatial designer. Just like we saw when internet came, it was very hard to move from print design, which was very static, to a more fluid and dynamic 2D, but digital design. So interesting things to be, but I think we're as always, overestimating the short-term changes and underestimating the long-term changes.
Yeah, very interesting. And you were right about TikTok, so let's hope you're right about this, because I'm excited about it.
Well, the things I've watched the last few years was more in the e-commerce space, is where social and commerce are merging. Shein and Temu are the more interesting things to watch right now.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe to wrap it up, because I mean, we can go in these things like AI and all of these trends.
I can yammer on for ages.
Yeah, but maybe let's say I'm listening to this as a brand manager, marketer, young person, and I'm excited, but also maybe a bit scared about the future. Like, what would you recommend in terms of skills or knowledge to go do and learn right now to future proof yourself?
Well, technology and platforms change, but humans don't change. We're still the same people who want the same things as 2,000 years ago in safety and love and recognition and shelter, all these things. So the best way, paradoxically, to future-proof yourself is to look back at the fundamentals of branding and marketing and look at what doesn't change. So the best way to invest in yourself is getting a firm grasp of these fundamentals and look at the classic things there. At the same time, apply this knowledge to each new platform that comes. So each new platform has a new language. TikTok has a different language than Instagram, than Twitter, than Facebook. So invest in an 80-20 percentage, 80 the fundamentals and 20 just throw yourself out there, just like I did with TikTok. I'm a 50-year-old dad getting 8,000 followers on TikTok by posting cringe dad jokes. But that allowed me to feel that algorithm and feel what works and what doesn't work. So get some playtime and don't stay at the outside of it. Throw yourself into it and experiment with it and get a feel of it. So even if you're working with an agency or with an expert or a freelancer, that you know what you're talking about and you don't get bullshitted.
Voila, I think that's amazing advice. For the people that maybe want to reach out or check out your stuff, Bart, where can they go?
I'm at Netlash on every channel. So tweet me or slide in my DMs or send me a dance video on TikTok. That's okay. But if you want to hire me professionally, I know a guy.be or I know a girl.be. You can choose.
Amazing. I'll put that in the show notes. Thanks so much for coming on, Bart.
You're welcome.
All right, that was it for this episode. As always, if you want to stay up to date on the latest news, new episodes, tutorials, sneak peeks, bonuses, all that stuff, go visit letstalkbranding.substack.com. Hope to see you in the next